Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into the shimmering, surprisingly oily, and sometimes wig-heavy world of ancient Egyptian beauty standards. A world where your skincare routine might just involve melting animal fat and winged eyeliner had a deeply spiritual meaning. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy falling asleep to weird historical facts and my softly whispered sarcasm. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to connect with you from around the globe. Now dim the lights, perhaps put on a fan for that gentle desert breeze hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Snuggle under your softest blanket and let the gentle current of time carry us back, past the bustling cities, past the whirring machines, past even the faintest echo of a Wi-Fi signal. We're going to ancient Egypt tonight, a land shimmering with gold and mystery, where the sands whispered secrets and the Nile flowed with the very lifeblood of civilization. And in this ancient land, amidst the grandeur of pyramids and the wisdom of scribes, there existed a world of beauty standards so utterly captivating, so wonderfully bizarre, and at times so wonderfully uncomfortable, that it will make you truly appreciate the wonders of your own modern bathroom cabinet. Imagine waking up in a mud brick home, the early morning sun already a golden caress on your skin, promising another day of glorious, relentless heat. No air conditioning hums a gentle lullaby. No cool shower awaits. Instead, there's the quiet rustle of linen, perhaps the distant bleating of a goat, and the rhythmic sound of, well, we'll get to that. Our journey begins, as so many good stories do, with the eyes. Specifically, with the mesmerizing almond-shaped eyes that gaze out at us from countless ancient Egyptian portraits and hieroglyphs. What made them so striking, so intensely defined? The answer, my dear friend, lies in the sacred eyeliner. This wasn't just a dash of mascara. Oh no, this was a daily ritual, a deeply significant act that blended practicality with profound spirituality. The ancient Egyptians called it kohl, and it was far more than a cosmetic. It was a shield, both physical and mystical. Picture a vibrant palette of dark green and shimmering black. The black kohl was primarily made from galena, a lead sulfide mineral. The green, equally popular, came from malachite, a copper carbonate. Imagine the meticulous process. Dedicated artisans grinding these raw minerals on a stone pallet, using a pestle. The air would be thick with fine dust, a cloud of ancient beauty swirling around them. This wasn't some quick swipe from a pre-packaged tube. This was an art form born of patience and precision. Now envision yourself as an ancient Egyptian, perhaps a noblewoman, preparing for a day of overseeing your household, or a priestess about to participate in a sacred ceremony. A small, beautifully carved kohl pot sits before you, along with a slender applicator stick. The powder is there, waiting, and the application, it wasn't a gentle flick of the wrist, it was a careful, deliberate process. The kohl was mixed with a binding agent, perhaps a little water, a touch of oil, or even animal fat. Yes, it comes back to that. This created a thick paste, almost like a very dark, rich paint. Then, with the applicator, it was applied, not just to the lash line, but often extending in a dramatic wing from the outer corner of the eye, sometimes reaching all the way to the hairline. This wasn't just for aesthetic flair. The dark pigment actually helped to reduce the sun's glare, much like the way modern athletes put black grease under their eyes. Think of the harsh, unrelenting glare of the desert sun, reflecting off the sands, dazzling and drying. Coal provided a tangible physical barrier, but its purpose went far beyond simple sun protection. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. For the ancient Egyptians, the eyes were believed to be the windows to the soul, and also vulnerable points through which evil spirits could enter the body. Therefore, coal was also a powerful protective amulet, a ward against malevolent forces and the dreaded evil eye. Every morning, as that dark line was meticulously drawn, it was an act of faith, a silent prayer for protection, a strengthening of the boundary between the inner self and the external world. It was a spiritual armour, meticulously crafted and applied with devotion. So when you wake up tomorrow morning, perhaps groggily reaching for your mascara wand or your liquid eyeliner, take a moment. Appreciate the sheer ease of it. A twist, a click, a quick swipe. No grinding of minerals, no mixing of pastes, no worry about evil spirits sneaking into your retina. You're not applying a mystical barrier, you're simply accentuating your natural beauty. And for that, my friend, we can offer a quiet murmur of gratitude to the cosmos. Imagine the sheer mess of grinding lead sulfide and copper carbonate in your bathroom every morning. Your white towels would never forgive you, and a Brita filter wouldn't help a bit with this kind of impurity. And the spiritual implications of forgetting your liner? Terrifying. We've certainly come a long way. Speaking of coming a long way, let's talk about fragrance. In ancient Egypt, the air wasn't filled with the delicate synthetic notes of your favourite perfume counter. No, the air was thick with something far more earthy, far more visceral, and frankly a bit more greasy. We're talking about scented cones, my friends. Yes, you heard that right. Cones made of animal fat, worn on your head. Consider this scene. A lively Egyptian party, perhaps a celebration of a good harvest, or a feast in honour of a deity. The air is warm, humid even, with the scent of roasted meats, sweet wines, and the chatter of many voices. And atop the heads of the most fashionable attendees, both men and women, sit small, conical objects. These weren't elaborate hats or decorative hairpieces. These were solid cones of animal fat, typically scented with various aromatic resins, myrrh, frankincense, and fragrant flowers like lilies, lotus, or jasmine. As the evening wore on and the heat of the gathering, combined with the natural warmth of the body, began to do its work, these cones would slowly, gradually melt. Picture it. A gentle trickle of perfumed animal fat, making its slow, greasy descent down your wig. Oh yes, we're getting to the wigs. Down your neck, perhaps even staining your fine linen garments. The idea, of course, was to release the beautiful fragrance in a slow, continuous stream, creating an aromatic aura around the wearer. It was, in essence, an ancient, very literal, slow-release perfume dispenser. Now pause for a moment and really visualize this. You're dressed in your finest linen, perhaps a beautifully pleated gown, and a blob of melting scented animal fat is making its way down your scalp, through your hair, and onto your collarbone. Feel that sensation, the warmth, the stickiness, the inevitable sheen of grease developing on your skin. Does that make you feel particularly glamorous? Probably not. Does it make you incredibly grateful for your modern-day spray perfumes, your scented body lotions, your dry shampoos, and your complete lack of head-borne fat cones? I should certainly hope so. Beyond these rather unique head adornments, personal hygiene and fragrance were still incredibly important. The Egyptians were masters of oils and unguents. They understood the power of moisture in a dry desert climate. Oils extracted from moringa, sesame and castor beans were used not just for anointing the body after bathing, but also as a base for their perfumes. Flowers and fragrant resins were steeped in these oils, creating rich, luxurious balms that would be massaged into the skin. Imagine the rich, earthy scent of myrrh mingled with the sweet notes of lily, clinging to your skin in the humid air. These oils weren't just about smelling good. They were vital for skin health, protecting against the harsh sun and the drying winds. They kept the skin supple, prevented cracking, and acted as a barrier against dust and insects. So, while the fat cones might sound a little intense, the underlying principle of luxurious scented skincare was definitely present. But still, the thought of a warm, greasy drip making its way down my spine at a party just sends shivers down my modern, air-conditioned spine. A quick spritz of eau de toilette seems far less adventurous and infinitely more hygienic. Give thanks for atomizers, my friend. Give deep, heartfelt thanks. And speaking of hygiene, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the hair on the head, or more accurately, the lack of hair on the head. Because for many ancient Egyptians, especially those of the upper classes, the most fashionable hairstyle wasn't hair at all. It was a meticulously shaved scalp, adorned with an elaborate wig. Now, before you recoil in horror at the thought of voluntarily going bald, understand the practicalities of living in a hot, dusty climate. Lice, fleas, and general scalp hygiene were a constant battle. Shaving the head offered a brilliant, simple solution. It was easier to keep clean, to wash thoroughly, and to manage. No more tangled knots in the morning. No more hours spent delousing a thick mane. Just a smooth, clean scalp ready for its daily adornment. And what adornment it was! Ancient Egyptian wigs were works of art, incredible feats of craftsmanship and patience. They were made from human hair, meticulously woven and braided onto a mesh of vegetable fibre. But that wasn't all. To add volume, shine, and hold, the hair was often stiffened and styled with beeswax and resin. Imagine that. A wig made of human hair, held together with sticky, slightly melting beeswax. The sheer dedication. These wigs came in all shapes and sizes, from short, tight curls to long, elaborate tresses, sometimes adorned with intricate braids, beads, or golden rings. They were symbols of status, wealth, and fashion. The more elaborate the wig, the higher your standing. Picture a grand procession or a formal banquet. Heads adorned with these majestic structures, swaying gently as their wearers moved. But let's be practical for a moment. You're wearing a wig, made of human hair, stiffened with beeswax, in the relentless Egyptian heat. What does that sound like to you? It sounds like an oven. A hot, heavy, surprisingly uncomfortable oven strapped to your head. Imagine the weight, the lack of air circulation, the inevitable itching as the beeswax begins to soften and perhaps even melt ever so slightly, clinging to your scalp. Think of the scalp sweat, the trapped heat, the sheer, overwhelming desire to rip it off and just feel a cool breeze on your bald head. Compare this, if you will, to your own bad hair days. A frizzy fringe, a limp ponytail, a stubborn cowlick. Annoying, yes. But does it involve a heavy, beeswax-laden structure clinging to your scalp in 100-degree heat? Probably not. Or perhaps you've worn a particularly heavy hat in the summer, that feeling of stifling warmth, the dampness against your scalp. Now multiply that discomfort by 10, and add the social pressure of maintaining a perfect sculpted coiffure for an entire day or even evening. And the removal process. I can only imagine the satisfying sticky peel as you finally liberated your scalp at the end of a long day. The relief must have been immense. So the next time you bemoan a messy bun or a flat hair day, perhaps spare a thought for your ancient Egyptian counterpart, sweating under a magnificent yet undeniably stifling wig. You, my friend, are truly blessed by the gods of modern hairstyling, with your lightweight synthetic extensions, your breathable hairnets, and your blessed air-conditioned salons. Our journey through ancient Egyptian beauty wouldn't be complete without a closer look at their skincare routines. Remember that unrelenting sun? That dry, dusty air? Protecting and nourishing the skin wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. And while they didn't have serums, toners, or the dizzying array of products found in your local Sephora, they had a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of plant-based skincare. As we discussed earlier, oils were paramount. Moringa oil, often called beehen oil, was highly prized for its emollient properties and its ability to absorb fragrances. Sesame oil, rich in vitamins, was another staple, as was castor oil. These weren't just for moisturizing. They were often infused with medicinal herbs or aromatic resins to treat skin conditions, soothe irritations, or simply add a pleasant scent. Imagine a daily ritual of gently massaging these rich, fragrant oils into your skin, feeling them sink in, providing a much-needed barrier against the elements. It sounds rather luxurious, doesn't it? Like a very decadent, all-natural body balm. But then we come to makeup beyond the eyes. For a touch of colour on the lips and cheeks, the Egyptians turned to nature's bounty once more. Red ochre. This natural earth pigment derived from iron oxide was ground into a fine powder and then mixed with a binding agent, often animal fat or resin, to create a paste. This paste was then applied to the lips and cheeks, much like a modern cream blush or lipstick. Now, while organic and natural are buzzwords in today's beauty industry, let's consider the user experience of ancient Egyptian red ochre. Imagine applying a slightly gritty, earthy paste to your lips. The colour might be vibrant, a lovely terracotta red, but the texture, a little coarse, perhaps even a bit drying. And the staying power? Probably not great, especially when you're eating, drinking, or sweating in the desert heat. One bite of a date and half your lip colour is gone. Contrast this with your perfectly smooth, long-wearing, non-transfer lipstick, or your finely milled, blendable powder blush. No grit, no fuss, just seamless colour that lasts for hours. You can eat, drink, talk, and kiss without fear of your face literally flaking off or migrating down your chin. And let's not forget the sheer variety of shades available to you. From subtle nudes to vibrant fuchsias, the options are endless. The ancient Egyptians, bless their resourceful hearts, made do with shades of earth, and while beautiful in their simplicity, they definitely lack the silky smooth application we take for granted. Consider also the sheer lack of choice. You got red ochre. That was your primary option for lip and cheek colour. Today you can spend hours agonising over the perfect shade of pink, peach, or berry. You can choose matte, satin, gloss, cream, liquid, stick. You have an entire universe of colour at your fingertips. For the ancient Egyptian, it was a very limited, very earthy palette. And while there's beauty in simplicity, sometimes a little more choice is a wonderful thing. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. Beyond the daily rituals, the ancient Egyptians also had various treatments for skin issues. Honey, with its natural antibacterial properties, was used in masks and poultices. Aloe vera, a soothing desert plant, would have been applied to sunburns and irritations. Exfoliation was also practiced, often using fine sand mixed with oils or even a form of natron salt. Imagine the gentle abrasion, the feeling of fresh skin emerging beneath the sun-baked layers. It was rudimentary, yes, but effective in its own way. But again, think of your multi-step skincare routine, your gentle cleansers, your chemical exfoliants, your hyaluronic acid serums, your retinol creams, your SPF 50 sunscreens, each product specifically formulated to target a particular concern, to deliver precise results, to feel incredibly luxurious on your skin. And then there's the blessed air conditioning that prevents you from sweating off all your meticulously applied products the moment you step outside. The ancient Egyptians' primary defense against the sun, beyond coal and oils, was often simply seeking shade or wearing light linen garments that covered most of the body. There was no SPF number on their skin salves. There was no concept of UVA/UVB protection. There was just the wisdom of staying out of the harshest midday sun and slathering on those precious oils. And while they achieved remarkable levels of preservation for their mummies, their living skin was constantly battling the elements in a way we rarely have to contend with. So the next time you're slathering on your luxurious night cream or misting your face with a hydrating spray, take a moment to truly appreciate the incredible advancements in skincare, the science, the comfort, the sheer efficacy of it all. You're not battling the relentless sun with animal fat and ground minerals. You're protected, nourished, and pampered by centuries of accumulated knowledge and innovation. And for that, your skin and your general well-being can be immensely grateful. Let's broaden our view a little now, beyond just the personal daily routine, and consider the cultural context of beauty in ancient Egypt. Beauty was deeply intertwined with religion, health, and social status. To be beautiful was to be favoured by the gods, to be healthy, and to project an image of prosperity and order. These sleek, stylized forms we see in their art are not just aesthetic choices. They reflect a profound belief in balance, harmony, and eternal youth. Even the most common tools of beauty were often exquisite in their design. Combs carved from ivory or wood, decorated with animal motifs. Mirrors made of highly polished bronze, so smooth they could reflect an image clearly, though perhaps not with the crystal clarity of your modern glass mirror. Small, intricately carved alabaster jars for storing oils and unguents. These weren't just utilitarian objects. They were works of art in themselves, imbued with meaning and beauty. Imagine preparing for a special occasion. Not just a quick shower and a change of clothes. Number it would be a full-day affair, a ceremonial bath perhaps with scented waters, the meticulous application of kohl, ensuring every line was perfect, every wing precise, the careful placement of the wig, perhaps a specially adorned one for the occasion, the anointing of the body with fragrant oils, followed by the careful placement of the melting fat cone on your head, ready to release its slow, greasy perfume throughout the festivities. Every step was deliberate, a ritual in itself, a transformation from the mundane to the magnificent. And it was all done without the conveniences we take for granted. No hot running water on demand, no fluffy towels pulled warm from a dryer, no bright adjustable lighting to ensure every detail was perfect. It was done by the light of oil lamps or the harsh glare of the sun with water carried from the Nile, and with the simple yet profound tools crafted from the earth itself. The dedication was immense, the results, in their context, breathtaking. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. Think about the sheer amount of time involved. The daily ritual of beauty was not a quick 10-minute affair. It was an investment of time, patience, and resources. For the elite, there would have been servants to assist with these elaborate preparations, but even so the process was lengthy and detailed. In a world without alarm clocks or strict schedules, perhaps this wasn't seen as a chore, but rather as a valued part of daily life, a peaceful meditative practice. But for us, in our fast-paced, efficiency-driven world, the idea of dedicating hours each day to such a meticulous and at times uncomfortable beauty routine feels almost unimaginable. We want quick results, minimal effort, and maximum impact. We want our beauty products to multitask, to be convenient, to fit into our busy schedules. And for that, my friend, we can be truly grateful. The luxury of speed, the luxury of simplicity, the luxury of not having melting animal fat running down our neck at a party. These are truly modern miracles. Consider also the societal pressure. In ancient Egypt, beauty was not just about personal preference. It was about conformity to a very specific ideal. The art, the statues, the reliefs, they all depict a consistent standard. Slender figures, strong, defined features, prominent eyes, and that unmistakable stylized beauty. Deviation from this ideal was rare in public representation. This wasn't a society that celebrated diverse body types or alternative looks. There was a template, and aspiring to it was a social expectation. In our modern world, while beauty standards certainly exist and can be equally, if not more, insidious in their reach, there is at least an idea of diversity, a growing acceptance of different aesthetics. You can choose to embrace natural hair, or dye it a vibrant rainbow. You can go makeup free, or create an avant-garde look. The options, while not always truly freeing, are at least more varied. The ancient Egyptian ideal was singular, pervasive, and highly influential. So as we bring this little exploration of ancient Egyptian beauty to a gentle close, let's reflect on what we've learned. We've seen the sacred eyeliner, a blend of protection and allure. We've envisioned the somewhat perplexing, yet undeniably aromatic melting fat cones. We've marvelled at the dedication involved in shaving one's head, only to adorn it with a heavy beeswax-laden wig. And we've appreciated the gritty, earthy simplicity of their skin care and makeup, in stark contrast to our sleek, sophisticated routines. Perhaps tonight, as you drift off, you might imagine a time when your only option for perfume was a melting cone of animal fat, or when your bad hair day involved a scalp itching under a heavy wig. Maybe you'll picture the meticulous grinding of minerals for your daily eye makeup, or the coarse texture of ochre on your lips. And as you do, a quiet wave of gratitude might wash over you. Gratitude for air conditioning, for flush toilets, for perfectly blended makeup, for lightweight shampoos, and for the sheer, unadulterated comfort of modern life. Rest easy, knowing that your beauty routine, while it might have its own small frustrations, is a far cry from the fascinating yet undeniably awkward practices of ancient Egypt. Sleep well, and dream of a world where beauty doesn't involve any melting fat. As you settle deeper into your pillows, we're going to step back into the heart of an ancient empire, a place where sacred flames burned perpetually, and young girls held the destiny of Rome in their delicate hands. Forget your worries about tomorrow's to-do list. Let's unravel the fascinating, often unsettling, and undeniably unique lives of the Vestal virgins. Let your breathing deepen, and imagine the bustling, vibrant chaos of ancient Rome. Not the Rome of gladiatorial contests or thundering legions, but a Rome of hushed temples, flickering lamps, and an undercurrent of deep, abiding superstition. In this formidable city, a select group of women held a power and privilege almost unimaginable for their time, yet it came with a heavy lifelong cost. We are talking about the Vestal virgins, the priestesses of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, home and family. Their story is one of immense honour, immense pressure, and a profound, often lonely dedication. Our journey into their world begins not with grand ceremonies or public acclaim, but with a quiet yet utterly life-altering moment, the choosing ceremony. Imagine the sacred space of the Temple of Vesta, illuminated by the perpetual flame itself, casting long, dancing shadows across the polished marble. The air might be thick with the scent of burning incense, mingling with the earthy aroma of ancient stone. A hush falls over the assembled priests and dignitaries, their faces solemn, their expectations palpable. Into this deeply reverent atmosphere steps a young girl, perhaps no older than 6, certainly no older than 10. Think about that for a moment. 6 years old. In our modern world, a 6-year-old is likely just learning to read, mastering their shoelaces, or perhaps deeply engrossed in a cartoon. They are utterly, deliciously, innocently children. Yet, in ancient Rome, at this tender age, a girl could be chosen for a life that would separate her forever from her family, from marriage, from motherhood, and from the ordinary rhythms of Roman society. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. The selection process itself was steeped in tradition and meticulous criteria. Potential Vestals had to be of noble birth, both parents still living and free from any physical imperfections. They were chosen by the Pontifex Maximus, the chief high priest of Rome, in a solemn ceremony that could feel both like a divine summons and an inescapable fate. The girl would be led forth, her small hand perhaps trembling in her father's, into the presence of this formidable religious leader. With a formal declaration, the Pontifex Maximus would utter the ritual words, effectively taking her from her parents' authority and placing her under the divine protection of Vesta. From that moment on, her life, as she knew it, ceased to exist. Can you imagine the psychological impact? At an age when most kids today are arguing about screen time or the merits of various sugary snacks, these girls were being inducted into a lifelong vow of celibacy and unwavering service to an empire. Their playthings would be replaced by sacred vessels, their childish giggles by solemn hymns. Their family home, with its familiar smells and comforting routines, would be exchanged for the austere, hallowed halls of the Atrium Vesti, the house of the Vestals. It was an honour, yes, a singular distinction, but one that came wrapped in an almost unbearable weight of responsibility and loneliness. Think of the goodbye. A final embrace with a mother, a father, siblings. Tears, no doubt, both from the family and perhaps, silently, from the little girl herself, who couldn't possibly fully grasp the monumental shift occurring in her life. She was leaving behind the carefree world of childhood for a purpose that transcended her individual desires, a purpose that, she would soon learn, directly impacted the very survival of Rome. No more scraped knees from playing in the Forum. Now it was soft, quiet footsteps on cold marble. No more childish squabbles over toys. Now it was the meticulous adherence to sacred rites. The contrast with a modern childhood, where autonomy and personal choice are increasingly valued, couldn't be starker. For these girls, choice simply wasn't on the table. It was destiny, handed down by the gods and interpreted by the powerful men of Rome. And for that, my friend, you can feel a deep, comforting sigh of relief that your biggest childhood challenge was probably sharing your crayons. A breeze stirred gently through the stone arches. Once chosen, a Vestal virgin embarked on a rigorous 30-year period of service, divided into 3 distinct decades: 10 years of learning, 10 years of service, and 10 years of teaching younger Vestals. After these 3 decades, at the age of 40 or thereabouts, a Vestal could theoretically retire and even marry, but few did. The transition back into ordinary Roman society after a lifetime of such elevated, cloistered service must have been incredibly jarring. Most chose to remain within the relative comfort and familiarity of the Vestal's life, perhaps continuing to advise younger priestesses or living out their days within the sacred precincts. Let's delve into a day in the life of a Vestal. Imagine waking before dawn in the Atrium Vesti, a vast complex adjacent to the Temple of Vesta in the Roman Forum. The air would still be cool, perhaps damp from the night, carrying the faint, ever-present scent of incense and wood smoke from the sacred fire. Their rooms, while comfortable, would have been simple, austere even, reflecting their dedication to duty over material indulgence. The central and most vital duty of the Vestals was the tending of the sacred flame. This wasn't just any fire. It was believed to be the Palladium, the very soul of Rome, a divine guarantee of the city's continued existence and prosperity. If the flame ever went out, it was considered a catastrophic omen, portending disaster and divine wrath upon the city. Imagine the immense, constant pressure of this responsibility. Every day, every hour, ensuring that flicker, that warmth, remained. So a Vestal's morning might begin with a quiet visit to the hearth, replenishing the fire with carefully selected wood, ensuring its constant, vibrant glow. The warmth would have been a comforting presence in the cool temple, a tangible connection to the goddess herself. This wasn't a chore. It was a sacred trust, performed with the utmost reverence. Picture the meticulous movements, the quiet focus, the gentle stirring of embers, a silent meditation on duty. Another critical daily ritual involved the collection of spring water. The Vestals were forbidden from using piped water from the city's aqueducts, which were considered impure for sacred purposes. Instead, they had to collect water daily from a specific sacred spring, often the Fons Caminarum, outside the city walls. Imagine this journey, carrying terracotta or clay vessels through the bustling, noisy streets of Rome, perhaps accompanied by attendants. The weight of the water, the jostle of the crowds, the constant awareness of their sacred duty. This water was then used for ritual purification, for sweeping and cleaning the temple, and for other sacred rites. It ensured that every aspect of their sacred space was touched by pure, untainted water, collected by their own hands. Think of your modern convenience, turning on a tap, and clean, fresh water gushes forth. Hot or cold as you desire. No daily trek, no heavy vessels, no worry about the sacred purity of your municipal supply. Just effortless, abundant water. Feel that surge of appreciation. The Vestals earned every drop of their ritual water through deliberate effort. It makes a modern municipal water bill seem like a steal, doesn't it? Their days would also involve numerous other rituals and responsibilities, preparing ritual meals, offering prayers to Vesta and other gods, maintaining the cleanliness of the temple and their living quarters, and perhaps assisting the Pontifex Maximus in various religious rites. Their lives were structured by duty, their every action imbued with sacred meaning. There was little room for personal whims or desires. Their time was not their own, it belonged to Rome. The Vestals often performed symbolic acts, like preparing the mola salsa, a sacred salted flour mixture used in many public sacrifices. This simple act of grinding grain and salt, performed by their pure hands, lent legitimacy and holiness to the offerings made throughout the city. Even these seemingly small tasks carried the weight of Roman belief. It was a life of quiet, unceasing service, a constant vigil for the well-being of an entire empire. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. Imagine the atmosphere within the Atrium Vesti, generally quiet save for the soft rustle of their distinctive white robes, the murmurs of prayer, or the gentle scraping of tools used for ritual preparation. There would have been a hierarchy among them, with the senior Vestal, the Vestalis Maxima, guiding and overseeing the younger priestesses. Their meals would have been simple, eaten communally, fostering a sense of shared purpose and sisterhood. Yet despite the companionship, there would always be that underlying pervasive pressure. The flame must not go out. The vow must not be broken. Rome depends on it. This was a life without the distraction of modern technology, without the clamour of social media, without the endless entertainment options that fill our leisure hours. Their entertainment was perhaps quiet contemplation. The rhythms of their rituals, the beauty of their sacred space, and the profound satisfaction of knowing they served a higher purpose. For us, this level of constant, unwavering focus on one sacred duty seems almost alien. We juggle multiple tasks, multiple interests, multiple distractions. The Vestals lived a life of singular devotion, and for that we can both admire their commitment and be incredibly thankful for our own freedom to multitask. Or, frankly, just to relax and do nothing at all. Now, let's pivot from their daily duties to their extraordinary standing in Roman society, because despite the strictures of their lives, the Vestal virgins enjoyed a degree of privilege and power that was almost unheard of for women in ancient Rome. In a patriarchal society where women were largely under the legal control of their fathers, husbands, or male guardians, the Vestals were legally independent from men. This was a truly revolutionary concept for the time. They could own property, make wills, and testify in court without a male guardian's permission. This gave them a significant degree of financial and personal autonomy that most Roman women could only dream of. Think about that for a second. While other Roman women were largely confined to domestic roles, managing households and raising children, the Vestals moved through Roman society with an almost regal authority. They were not just priestesses, they were in essence religious celebrities with diplomatic immunity. Their presence in public was marked by profound respect and deference. When a Vestal appeared in public, usually attended by a lictor, an official attendant who normally accompanied magistrates, people would step aside. Even consuls and emperors would lower their fasces, symbols of authority, in their presence. If a criminal was being led to execution and happened to cross paths with a Vestal, he could be pardoned, provided the Vestal swore it was by accident, not design. Imagine that power, a chance encounter, a moment of divine intervention, all resting on the pure presence of a Vestal virgin. This literally put them in a position of life or death influence over others. They had reserved seats of honour at public games and theatrical performances, an unheard of privilege for women. They could intercede on behalf of citizens, and their testimony was considered inviolable, as they were believed to be above reproach and manipulation. Documents and treaties were often entrusted to their care in the Temple of Vesta, as it was considered the safest and most sacred repository in Rome, a testament to the trust placed in their integrity. Contrast this with the lives of most other Roman women. The vast majority were expected to be dutiful wives, mothers, and household managers. Their influence was largely confined to the domestic sphere. They could not vote, hold public office, or own significant property independently. While some wealthy women exerted influence through their husbands or sons, none held the direct personal legal autonomy or public veneration of the Vestals. The Vestal stood as an anomaly, a testament to the unique power that religious sanctity could bestow, even in the most rigid of social structures. It's a curious paradox, a life of profound restriction in terms of personal freedom, no marriage, no children, came with an equally profound liberation in terms of legal and social standing. It's like a medieval nun having more political clout than a queen. It was a trade-off, certainly, but one that offered a very different path for women in ancient Rome, a path that led to influence and respect far beyond the domestic confines of other women's lives. And for that, we can certainly acknowledge their unique position, even as we feel grateful for the broader freedoms enjoyed by women in our modern world, where power doesn't necessarily come at the cost of personal life choices. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. They lived in relative luxury compared to most Romans. Their living quarters, the Atrium Vestae, were spacious and well appointed, with private rooms, gardens, and even baths. They had servants and a comfortable allowance. Their every material need was met, allowing them to focus entirely on their sacred duties. This wasn't a life of hardship in a physical sense, but rather a life defined by spiritual and emotional rigour. They were the ultimate chosen few, living lives of public splendour but private, unwavering devotion. It's a remarkable testament to how deeply interwoven religion and civic life were in ancient Rome, where even the well-being of the empire hinged on the purity and diligence of these chosen women. A breeze stirred gently through the stone arches. The influence of the Vestals was not just symbolic, it was tangible. They participated in major state ceremonies, presided over rituals that maintained the Pax Deorum, peace of the gods, and their very presence was seen as a blessing. If a riot broke out in the Forum, the mere appearance of a Vestal could sometimes quell the unrest. Such was the reverence they commanded. Their white robes, their serene demeanour, their sacred calling, all contributed to an aura of unassailable holiness that inspired awe and respect from all levels of Roman society. It was a power that derived not from force or wealth, but from perceived purity and divine favour. And if you think about it, wielding such soft power purely through moral authority is an incredibly rare and potent thing in any age, especially one as prone to violence and politicking as ancient Rome. Imagine being able to stop a full-blown riot just by showing up. That's a level of influence even modern politicians would envy. And now we come to the most profound and defining aspect of their lives, the vow of chastity. This wasn't merely a suggestion or a preference. It was the absolute core of their identity and their sacred duty. For the entire 30 years of their active service, Vestal virgins were required to maintain absolute celibacy. This vow was not just a personal commitment. It was believed to be intrinsically linked to the well-being of Rome itself. Vesta, as the goddess of the hearth, represented purity, stability, and the continuity of the Roman state. The purity of her priestesses was seen as a direct reflection of the purity and strength of Rome. Explore the emotional and symbolic weight of this vow. For a young girl, taken from her family, this meant a complete severance from the natural path of womanhood as understood in Roman society. Marriage, childbearing, and the establishment of one's own family. It was a sacrifice of immense personal proportion, a life dedicated wholly to the state and the gods. The focus was on devotion. on unwavering service and on the terrifying consequences of failure. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. The fear of breaking this vow of incestum, unchastity, was immense, both for the individual Vestal and for the entire city. If a Vestal was accused of breaking her vow, it was not merely a scandal, it was considered an act of sacrilege that threatened the very fabric of Roman society. Earthquakes, military defeats, plagues, any civic disaster could be attributed to a Vestal's impurity. The pressure on these women to maintain their purity not just physically but in thought and deed was almost unfathomable. Imagine living every single day under that kind of scrutiny, knowing that the fate of your entire civilization could theoretically rest on your personal conduct. No pressure, right? Just the weight of an empire and the internal struggle to maintain such an impossible ideal when you were, after all, only human. And gently, we must address the punishment for breaking the vow. Because while we seek a calming, sleep-friendly narrative, the reality of incestum was stark and chilling, reflecting the immense gravity Rome placed on the Vestal's purity. A Vestal accused of unchastity would undergo a public trial. If found guilty, she was not executed in the usual manner, which was often beheading or strangulation. Instead, she was subjected to a unique and deeply symbolic punishment: immurement. A breeze stirred gently through the stone arches. This involved being buried alive, not in a public spectacle of violence, but in a quiet, isolated spot, often on the Campus Sceleratus, the field of wickedness, outside the Colline Gate. A small underground chamber would be prepared, containing a simple couch, a small lamp, and a little bread and water. The Vestal would be led to this chamber, often veiled, signifying her symbolic death and separation from the living world. She would then be lowered into the chamber, which was then sealed. Essentially, she was left to die of starvation and suffocation. The rationale was that since her life was sacred, her blood could not be spilled by human hands. So this method was chosen as a way for the gods themselves to decide her ultimate fate. If she truly was innocent, Vesta would save her. If not, she would perish. This horrific punishment underscores the absolute seriousness of their vow. It was a life-or-death trust exercise, with the entire city of Rome as the overseer. The fear of this fate must have been a constant chilling presence in their lives, an ultimate motivator to uphold their purity, not just for their own survival, but for the perceived survival of Rome. It casts a long, sombre shadow over their lives of privilege and power. For all their public honour, their private burden was immense. Imagine the sheer mental fortitude required to live under such a terrifying consequence. A casual fling, a moment of weakness, could mean utter annihilation. A Vestal at age 40, having dedicated decades, might feel the accumulated weight of this pressure most acutely, perhaps a silent despair at the thought of any slip, any misstep that could unravel everything. And for that, my friend, you can appreciate the relative leniency of your own societal expectations and the blissful freedom to make your own relationship choices without the threat of being buried alive by your government. Truly, a modern luxury we often overlook. The historical records suggest that cases of incestum were rare. This could mean that the Vestals were incredibly diligent in upholding their vows, or that accusations were difficult to prove, or perhaps that the sheer terror of the punishment acted as an almost impenetrable deterrent. Regardless, the rarity of such events only served to reinforce the Vestals' image as paragons of purity and devotion, strengthening their sacred role in the Roman psyche. They were the living embodiment of Rome's moral and spiritual strength, and their chastity was the cornerstone of that identity. It was a fragile, yet immensely powerful symbol. As Rome grew, so too did the number of Vestals, eventually reaching 6, always 6, maintaining the sacred fire and carrying out their duties. Their rituals, their presence, and their unwavering devotion became so deeply ingrained in Roman identity that it's hard to imagine the city without them. They were more than priestesses. They were living symbols, physical manifestations of Rome's connection to the divine. Their legacy and mystery continue to fascinate historians and enthusiasts alike. The Vestals endured for over 1,000 years, from the legendary founding of Rome to the very twilight of the Western Roman Empire. They predated Christianity, and even as the old pagan religions waned, the Vestals continued their vigil, a stubborn, resilient link to an ancient past. The air was filled with hushed reverence, like a prayer whispered through stone halls. The gradual fading of the cult mirrors the decline of Rome itself. With the rise of Christianity as the dominant religion, the old pagan practices, including the veneration of Vesta, were increasingly seen as archaic and idolatrous. Emperors like Theodosius I eventually banned pagan cults in the late 4th century CE. The sacred flame was extinguished for the last time, and the Vestals were disbanded. Their long unbroken chain of service finally came to an end. Imagine that final moment. The sacred fire which had burned for over a millennium finally snuffed out. The solemn silence as the last Vestal left the Atrium Vesti, perhaps carrying her few personal belongings, stepping out into a world that was rapidly transforming, a world that no longer had a place for her ancient sacred role. It must have been an incredibly poignant and lonely moment, the end of an era stretching back to the very origins of their civilization. A breeze stirred gently through the stone arches. Their story is a reflection on silence, pressure, and quiet influence. The Vestals were not warriors or politicians, yet their influence permeated every level of Roman society. Their power was subtle, derived from their sanctity and the fear of divine displeasure. They lived under immense pressure, a constant vigil against both the metaphorical extinguishing of the flame of Rome and the literal extinguishment of their own lives if they failed. Their existence was a testament to the Roman belief in the interconnectedness of the sacred and the civic, where religious purity was seen as essential for imperial prosperity. The mystery surrounding them persists. What were their daily conversations like? What were their personal thoughts and feelings about their extraordinary lives? Beyond the formal duty and public image, what were their private joys, their quiet sorrows? History often records the grand narratives, but the intimate details of lives lived under such unique circumstances often remain tantalizingly out of reach. They lived in a bubble of immense privilege and equally immense responsibility, a world apart even within the bustling confines of Rome. Today, the ruins of the Atrium Vestae and the Temple of Vesta still stand in the Roman Forum, silent witnesses to a millennium of unwavering service. You can walk among the remnants of their living quarters. Imagine the flickering lamplight, the soft footsteps on marble, the whispers of prayer. You can almost feel the presence of those dedicated women who maintain the sacred flame, bearing the hopes and fears of an entire empire on their slender shoulders. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll carry with you a quiet reflection on the Vestal virgins. Their lives, though filled with honour, were undeniably demanding, defined by sacrifice and overshadowed by the most terrifying of consequences. And for that you can feel a profound sense of gratitude for the freedom of choice in your own life, for the privacy of your decisions, and for the simple, comforting knowledge that your biggest worry before bed is probably just remembering to set your alarm. Sleep well, my friend, far from the ancient Roman pressure cooker. As you drift further into comfort, let's embark on a quiet journey through time, exploring the extraordinary efforts of those who safeguarded the world's knowledge. Forget your digital devices and instant information. We're going back to a time when preserving a single thought was an act of profound dedication. Let your eyelids grow heavier and imagine a world where information was not just at your fingertips, but etched into the very earth itself. We're travelling back through the mists of millennia to the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, a land of rivers, reeds, and the ingenious invention of writing. Here, in the sun-baked plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, the earliest keepers of the written word began their painstaking, incredibly physical work in what we can only describe as the clay libraries of Mesopotamia. Picture a long, low-ceilinged room, perhaps made of sun-dried mud bricks, offering a cool respite from the relentless Mesopotamian heat. The air inside might be dry and dusty, carrying the faint scent of earth, and perhaps the subtle, acrid tang of reed ash. Along the walls, neatly stacked on simple wooden shelves, are not books as we know them, but thousands upon thousands of clay tablets, each one a small, heavy rectangle, inscribed with an intricate series of wedge-shaped marks. Cuneiform, the world's first true writing system. These were the libraries of the ancient world, repositories of law codes, epic poems, astronomical observations, administrative records, and even humble shopping lists, each tablet a testament to human ingenuity and the profound desire to capture fleeting thoughts and hard-won knowledge. Imagine the weight of one in your hand, perhaps still bearing the faint imprint of a long-dead scribe's thumb. It's a tangible link to a mind from 4,000 years ago, an echo across time. A breeze stirred gently through the river reeds. Now let's step into a scribble school, the heart of this early intellectual endeavour. These weren't grand universities, but often humble buildings, sometimes attached to temples or palaces. Here, young boys, typically from wealthier families, would spend years learning the incredibly complex art of cuneiform. The atmosphere would be one of intense concentration, punctuated by the rhythmic, soft sounds of learning. Imagine a small group of students, perhaps sitting on rush mats on the floor, each with a lump of wet clay before them. Their tools are simple: a reed stylus carefully cut to create the distinctive wedge shapes. The teacher, the master scribe, would demonstrate, his movements precise and deliberate. The students would then try to replicate the complex signs, pressing the stylus into the soft, yielding clay. It's a messy business, requiring a delicate balance of pressure and angle. Too hard and you deform the tablet, too soft and the impression isn't clear. The air would be silent save for the low murmur of the teacher's instructions, the quiet intake of breath from a concentrating student, and the constant, almost meditative sound of the stylus tapping clay. Tap, tap, press, drag. Each sound a tiny act of creation. Imagine the patience required, day after day, year after year, perfecting those thousands of distinct signs, each one capable of representing a syllable or a whole word. It wasn't just learning an alphabet, it was mastering an entire system of symbolic representation, akin to learning a new language, calligraphy, and basic geometry all at once. And imagine the mistakes. One wrong wedge, one slipped hand, and the entire tablet might be ruined. No undo button, no delete key. The only option was to smooth out the wet clay and start over, or discard the tablet entirely and begin anew. Think of your own frustration with a computer glitch or a typo. Now imagine that typo costing you not just a few seconds, but potentially hours of meticulous work. The sheer physical effort involved in correcting an error or simply making a clean copy would have been immense. For that alone, you can offer a quiet murmur of thanks for spell check and the glorious backspace key. A Mesopotamian scribe's version of Google Drive would have been a very heavy cart full of baked clay. The scribal schools were rigorous. Students would spend years copying lists of words, proverbs, legal texts, and literary works. Repetition was key. The sun would track across the sky, casting ever-shifting shadows through narrow openings as the students hunched over their work, their fingers growing sore, their eyes tired from scrutinizing the intricate marks. The dust motes would dance in the sunlight, illuminated by the silent industry of learning. Once inscribed, the tablets had to be carefully dried, often in the sun, and then sometimes baked in kilns to make them hard and durable, preserving the writing for millennia. This final step ensured that the knowledge wasn't fleeting, but could withstand the ravages of time, fire, and flood. And indeed, many of these baked clay tablets have survived, allowing us to read the thoughts and stories of people who lived thousands of years ago, a testament to the incredible foresight and dedication of those early scribes. They weren't just writing, they were building an enduring legacy, one heavy, dusty tablet at a time. Consider the sheer physical endurance involved, and you'll find a newfound appreciation for the feather-light touch of a modern keyboard. A gentle breeze rustled through the library windows. Our journey now carries us forward in time and across the sea, to the shimmering shores of Ptolemaic Egypt, and a beacon of knowledge that captivated the ancient world, the Great Library of Alexandria. Here, the written word took on a new form, and the ambition to collect all knowledge reached unprecedented heights. Imagine stepping into the grand halls of the Library of Alexandria, not humble clay rooms, but towering structures of gleaming marble and polished stone. Sunlight streams through high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, perhaps carrying the faint scent of papyrus and scholarly pursuits. Here, the written word was no longer etched into heavy clay, but inscribed onto delicate, flexible papyrus scrolls. Rows upon rows, stacked from floor to ceiling, in cubbyholes and on shelves, were literally hundreds of thousands of scrolls. This was a place of intellectual pilgrimage, drawing scholars, poets, and thinkers from across the known world. The ambition behind the library was staggering: to collect every book ever written, to translate them into Greek, and to make all knowledge accessible. It was an ancient Google, a universal archive, a global brain of unparalleled scope. Imagine the atmosphere, hushed but alive with intellectual energy. Scholars would be seated at long tables, their heads bowed over scrolls, perhaps murmuring to themselves as they read or dictated to scribes. The air might hum with quiet debates, the rustle of papyrus, and the soft scratching of reeds on new sheets. There would be a gentle, pervasive scent of aged papyrus, perhaps like dry leaves and old paper, a smell of wisdom itself. The process of creating scrolls was intricate. Papyrus reeds grown in the Nile Delta were stripped, pressed and layered to form sheets, which were then glued together to create long rolls, sometimes dozens of feet in length. Scribes would carefully copy texts onto these rolls, using reed pens and black ink made from soot and gum Arabic. The work was still painstaking, still prone to error, but the medium itself was lighter, more portable, and allowed for longer continuous texts. Think of the sheer logistics involved in managing such a vast collection. No digital databases, no search engines, just meticulous cataloguing by hand, by subject, by author. Imagine being a librarian here, navigating a labyrinth of hundreds of thousands of scrolls, each needing to be unrolled, read and re-rolled correctly. One misplaced scroll could mean a lost epic or a forgotten scientific treatise. It was a monumental task, requiring dedication, precision, and an incredible memory for the contents of those countless rolls. And imagine the despair of a scribe, realizing a section of his painstakingly copied work was ruined by damp or insects, perhaps an entire day's labour lost. No Control-Z to bring back that ancient wisdom. A gentle breeze rustled through the library windows. Compare this to your modern internet. We have access to virtually all human knowledge at the click of a button, often on a device that fits in our pocket. The chaos of information overload, the cacophony of opinions, the sheer volume can be overwhelming. Imagine if all of Reddit was scrolls and Socrates was your mod. The Library of Alexandria was the ancient world's answer to this, a centralized, curated collection. It offered a quiet, focused pursuit of knowledge, free from the endless distractions of our digital age. The scholars who worked at Alexandria were not just copyists, they were translators, editors, and critical thinkers. They collated different versions of texts, debated interpretations, and pushed the boundaries of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. It was a true intellectual powerhouse, a testament to the idea that by gathering and preserving knowledge, humanity could progress. The peace of that pursuit, the ambition to know everything, is something truly inspiring. It was a place where knowledge was revered as the highest form of treasure, a silent sanctuary for the human mind. And for that ambition, that singular, quiet focus on learning, we can offer a deep, grateful nod to those ancient scholars. Your chaotic Google search has a long, noble, and surprisingly serene ancestry. Our journey continues across centuries and continents to a dramatically different setting for the preservation of the written word, the monastic scriptorium of medieval Europe. The grandeur of Alexandria has faded, replaced by the austere, often cold, stone walls of a monastery, where piety and learning intertwined in the quiet pursuit of God's word and the preservation of ancient texts. Imagine a long, narrow room, perhaps lit by the dim, flickering glow of tallow candles and the pale light filtering through narrow, arched windows. The air is cool, often damp, carrying the scent of damp stone, parchment, and beeswax. This is the scriptorium, the heart of intellectual life in the early Middle Ages. Here, monks, sometimes nuns, dedicated their lives to the painstaking solitary work of copying manuscripts by hand. A monk's day was structured by the monastic rule, often beginning before dawn with prayers in the chapel. After a simple meal, they would move to the scriptorium, where they would spend long silent hours bent over their work. The silence was profound, broken only by the softest sounds, the quill scratching parchment, the gentle turning of a page, the occasional sigh of concentration. Their tools were rudimentary, a sharpened quill, often from a goose feather, a pot of ink painstakingly mixed from soot, gallnuts, and gum arabic, and sheets of parchment made from animal skins, calf, sheep, or goat, meticulously prepared to be smooth and receptive to ink. The preparation of parchment itself was a laborious process, involving scraping, stretching, and drying, making each sheet incredibly valuable. The work was slow, incredibly precise, and deeply demanding on the eyes and hands. A single book, especially a large religious text like a Bible, could take years to complete. Imagine copying thousands upon thousands of words, letter by letter, day after day. One mistake could mean hours of painstaking correction. Scraping off the ink with a sharp knife, an eraser was not an option, or carefully patching the parchment. And even then, the correction would be visible, a tiny scar on the otherwise perfect page. This was not a job for the impatient or the clumsy. One typo could indeed take 3 hours to fix, and that's if you noticed it at all. This rigorous work was often performed in chilling conditions. Monasteries were rarely heated efficiently, and the monks' fingers would often be numb with cold, especially in winter. The flickering candlelight, while atmospheric, would have cast dancing shadows, making precise work even harder. Their backs would ache, their eyes would strain, but they persevered, driven by a deep sense of spiritual duty. They believed they were not just copying words, but preserving divine truth and safeguarding the knowledge of the past for future generations. And then there were the illuminated manuscripts. These weren't just copies, they were works of art. Picture the opening page of a gospel book, adorned with golden letters that shimmered in the candlelight, intricate painted vines curling around the text, colourful miniature scenes depicting biblical events, and precise margins filled with whimsical beasts or delicate floral patterns. To create these, special pigments were used, often ground from precious minerals like lapis lazuli for blue or malachite for green. Gold leaf was applied with painstaking care, burnished to a brilliant shine. This was a multidisciplinary effort, often involving different monks specializing in lettering, painting, and binding. The silence of the scriptorium would be broken only by the quiet hum of concentration, or perhaps the distant sound of chanting from another room, reminding them of their sacred purpose. It was a life of quiet contemplation, profound dedication, and immense physical endurance. For us, with our instant digital fonts, our perfectly printed books, and our climate-controlled offices, the monastic scriptorium feels like a world away. The sheer effort involved in producing a single book, let alone a beautifully illuminated one, makes our casual consumption of mass-produced texts feel almost sacrilegious. So, the next time you pick up a paperback or scroll through an e-reader, take a moment to appreciate the centuries of aching backs, strained eyes, and frozen fingers that paved the way for your effortless access to the written word. These monks were the unsung heroes of literacy and learning during a period often called the Dark Ages. They meticulously copied not only religious texts, but also the works of classical Greek and Roman authors, preventing countless ancient texts from being lost to time and decay. Without their patient, solitary work in those cold, candle-lit rooms, much of the knowledge of antiquity would have vanished forever. They were the human hard drives, backing up civilization one laborious page at a time, and for that we owe them an eternal debt of gratitude. Imagine trying to recover information from a corrupted medieval hard drive. No geek squad to call. Finally, our journey takes us eastward to a different golden age of intellectual flourishing, the vibrant, bustling city of Baghdad and its legendary House of Wisdom. Here, during the Islamic Golden Age, the pursuit of knowledge reached new heights, embracing curiosity, translation, and scholarly debate in a way that truly enriched human civilization. Imagine stepping into the House of Wisdom, perhaps a vast complex of buildings with courtyards and gardens, filled with the murmur of voices, the rustle of scrolls unrolling, and the subtle scent of ink and parchment. Unlike the hushed monastic scriptoriums, This was a place of vibrant intellectual exchange, a true academy and library, a hub of global knowledge. A gentle breeze rustled through the library windows. Established by Caliph al-Ma'mun in the 9th century, the House of Wisdom wasn't just a library, it was a research institution, a translation centre, and an observatory. Its primary mission was ambitious: to collect, translate, and preserve the knowledge of the ancient world. Scholars from across the Islamic world and beyond flocked here, eager to translate the works of Greek, Indian, and Persian thinkers into Arabic. This included monumental works by Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, Galen, Ptolemy, and countless others. Imagine the sheer volume of work. Hundreds of scribes and translators working tirelessly side by side. Texts would be passed between rooms, from a Greek scholar translating into Arabic to an Arab copyist diligently recording the new translation. The soundscape would be rich with the soft murmur of different languages, the steady rhythm of quill on parchment, and the occasional burst of excited debate as scholars wrestled with complex concepts or celebrated a breakthrough. The atmosphere was one of intellectual dynamism and open inquiry. Scholars weren't just preserving knowledge, they were building upon it, critiquing it, and expanding it. They made groundbreaking advancements in mathematics, introducing Arabic numerals including the concept of zero, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and optics. They developed algebra, refined astronomical instruments, and performed complex surgical procedures that wouldn't be seen in Europe for centuries. This was a time when the Islamic world was the intellectual epicenter of the globe, absorbing and building upon the scattered fragments of ancient knowledge, and then adding their own immense contributions. Think of it as a pre-internet global collaboration, where the greatest minds from different cultures came together, united by a shared thirst for understanding. It was Google Translate, but with more poetry and less autocorrect, all done by brilliant human minds. The House of Wisdom's commitment to scholarship extended beyond translation. They also produced original research, wrote commentaries on classical texts, and compiled vast encyclopedias of knowledge. Books were revered, not just as sacred objects, but as essential tools for progress and enlightenment. Libraries were established in major cities throughout the Islamic world, demonstrating a widespread commitment to literacy and learning. Imagine the scholars, often working late into the night, by the soft glow of oil lamps, their faces illuminated by the pursuit of truth, thus driven by a profound respect for learning and a belief that knowledge brought one closer to the divine. The quiet dedication of the scribes, the passionate debates of the philosophers, the patient observations of the astronomers, all contributed to an environment of unparalleled intellectual vitality. Compare this scholarly environment to our modern libraries or even the vastness of the internet. We have unparalleled access, but perhaps sometimes lack the focused intensity, the deep immersion that characterized these ancient centers of learning. The sheer effort required to acquire knowledge, traveling across continents, learning multiple languages, laboriously copying texts, meant that those who pursued it did so with an incredible, unwavering passion. The legacy of the House of Wisdom is immeasurable. Much of the Greek and Roman knowledge that forms the bedrock of Western civilization was preserved through these translations, eventually making its way back to Europe during the Renaissance. Without the meticulous work of the scholars in Baghdad, countless ancient texts might have been lost forever, plunging humanity into a much deeper, dark age. They were the intellectual bridge between antiquity and the modern world, the diligent custodians of humanity's shared intellectual heritage. and for their incredible efforts for saving so much of what we now take for granted as knowledge, we can offer a deep, appreciative nod as we drift off to sleep. They truly kept the flame of knowledge burning as we gently conclude our journey through the silent halls of clay libraries, the grand spaces of Alexandria, the quiet scriptoriums, and the vibrant house of wisdom. We are left with a profound sense of awe for those who kept the written word alive, from the painstaking tap of a stylus on clay to the precise scratch of a quill on parchment. Each act was a testament to the human desire to learn, to preserve, and to pass on. Tonight, as you rest, remember the immense effort involved in creating and maintaining these ancient libraries. Your comfortable access to books, to information, to every thought ever written is a luxury built on millennia of silent, dedicated work. So, sleep soundly, knowing that the keepers of the written word worked incredibly hard so you could enjoy the effortless pleasure of simply turning a page or tapping a screen and entering another world. Tonight, let's leave the grand tombs and towering pharaohs behind and gently settle into the rhythm of everyday life in ancient Egypt. Imagine the sun warming your skin, the smell of fertile earth, and the quiet hum of a civilization built on the flow of a magnificent river. We're going to experience the subtle magic and surprising hardships of daily life on the Nile. Good evening, sleepy traveller. Sink a little deeper into your blanket, let your thoughts drift, and allow the gentle current of time to carry us far, far back. We're journeying to ancient Egypt, not to the glittering palaces of kings or the solemn rituals of priests, but to the sun-drenched fields, the humble mud-brick homes, and the bustling workshops of ordinary people. This is the story of daily life, shaped by the ebb and flow of the mighty Nile, a life of enduring rhythms, simple pleasures, and challenges that will make you deeply grateful for your modern comforts. Our journey begins, as all life in ancient Egypt did, with the rhythm of the flood. The Nile wasn't just a river, it was the lifeblood, the clock, the very pulse of existence. It shaped their calendar, their agriculture, and their understanding of time itself. The Egyptian year was divided into 3 distinct seasons, each dictated by the Nile's annual cycle: Akhet, the season of inundation or flood; Pere, the season of growth or emergence; and Shimu, the season of harvest. Imagine a life lived entirely by the rise and fall of a single powerful river. No yearly planner needed, just an understanding of the Nile's ancient wisdom. Every summer, without fail, the Nile would begin to swell, fed by torrential rains in the Ethiopian highlands. By late July or early August, the river would burst its banks, gently, gradually, spreading nutrient-rich black silt across the arid landscape. This was Akhet, the flood. For weeks the land would be submerged, a vast inland sea, broken only by the raised villages and temple complexes. While it meant temporary displacement from the fields, it was greeted not with dread, but with immense relief and gratitude. This annual inundation was divine blessing, the very guarantee of life. Picture the scene. The rich, black silt carried thousands of miles, settling softly upon the parched earth. This wasn't just dirt. It was fertile gold, packed with the organic matter essential for growing crops in a desert land. As the floodwaters slowly receded, usually by October, they would leave behind this miraculous blanket of topsoil, moist and ready for planting. The land would emerge, transformed, reborn. This was a time of intense community effort. As soon as the water receded enough, families would rush to plant their crops, barley and emmer wheat primarily, but also flax, lentils and vegetables. Imagine the farmers, their bare feet sinking into the still damp, incredibly rich earth, feeling the cool, soft mud between their toes. Their hands would swiftly sow the seeds, knowing that their very survival depended on the success of this delicate dance with the river. There were no massive tractors, no sophisticated irrigation systems beyond rudimentary canals and shaduffs, water-lifting devices. Just human muscle, simple tools, and an intimate ancestral knowledge of the land and its moods. The soundscape would be alive with purpose, the squelching of wet soil underfoot, the rhythmic swish of hands sowing seeds, perhaps the soft murmuring of prayers to the Nile god Happy. The air would smell of damp earth, rich and fecund, promising sustenance. It was a time of hope, of shared labour, and of deep connection to the land that sustained them all. Then came Perret, the season of growth. From October to February the crops would sprout and mature, nourished by the fertile silt and the lingering moisture. This was the time for diligent tending, weeding, protecting the young plants from pests, and for some fields, irrigating using those basic yet effective methods. Imagine long days under the gentle winter sun, patiently removing weeds by hand, checking on the ripening ears of grain. The fields would be a vibrant green, a stark contrast to the surrounding desert, a testament to the Nile's generative power. And as the days grew longer and the crops grew taller, so too with the quiet anticipation of the harvest. Finally, Shimu, the harvest season, arriving from March to May. The golden fields of wheat and barley would stretch under the intensifying sun, ready for gathering. This was a joyous yet incredibly demanding time. Farmers would use sickles to cut the ripened stalks, bundling them into sheaves. The grain would then be threshed, often by animals treading on it to separate the kernels from the stalks, and then winnowed, tossing it into the air to let the breeze carry away the lighter chaff. Imagine the dust, the sweat, the relentless labour under a blazing sun, but also the laughter, the songs, and the shared sense of accomplishment as the precious grain was gathered. For us, with our supermarket shelves overflowing, our instant access to food, and our detached relationship with where our meals actually come from, this intimate connection to the earth and its seasons is almost unimaginable. We don't worry about the annual flood, or if the silt will be rich enough, or if a single pest infestation will mean starvation. We have global supply chains, refrigerators, and the blissful convenience of ordering groceries online. So, as you snuggle deeper, take a moment to be incredibly thankful for that disconnection, for the luxury of having food magically appear on your table, completely independent of a river's generosity. No bug spray, no refrigerators, no takeout. Just hope, a breeze, and a lot of walking. Now let's step away from the fields and invite ourselves inside an Egyptian home, a humble mud brick dwelling where families lived their daily lives. Most homes were relatively simple, built from sun-dried mud bricks, a material readily available from the Nile's abundant clay. These homes, often clustered together in villages, offered refuge from the sun and the elements, though perhaps not from the ever-present dust and flies. Imagine entering such a home. The doorway would likely be low, requiring you to duck your head. Inside, the walls would be thick, providing insulation from the summer heat and winter chill. The floor would be packed earth, perhaps covered with woven mats or a simple rug. Furniture would be sparse, perhaps a few low stools, a wooden chest for belongings, and a simple table. The main living space would be a communal area for eating, socializing, and various household tasks. In one corner you might see the clay oven, a simple domed structure used for baking bread, the staple of the Egyptian diet. Imagine the women of the house perhaps squatting beside it, kneading dough, the rhythmic sound of grinding wheat on a stone quern filling the air. The scent of freshly baking bread, warm and comforting, would have permeated the home. Beside it, large clay storage jars would hold grain, water, and perhaps beer. And speaking of beer, it wasn't just a beverage. It was a fundamental part of the diet consumed by men, women, and children alike. It was nutritious, safer to drink than unfiltered water, and provided calories and vitamins. Imagine the process. Fermented barley, a thick, cloudy concoction, perhaps flavoured with dates or honey. No crisp, cold lagers from the fridge. This was warm, earthy, and essential. During the scorching summer months when the heat inside the thick-walled houses became unbearable, families often resorted to rooftop sleeping. Imagine climbing a simple external staircase to the flat roof of your home as dusk settled. The air would still be warm, but a gentle breeze might offer some relief. Laying out woven mats, the family would sleep under the vast, star-studded desert sky. The sounds of the village would fade, replaced by the chirping of insects and the distant calls of night animals. This shared experience, lying side by side with your loved ones under an infinite canopy of stars, might have brought a simple, profound joy. A sense of belonging and peace despite the day's toil. It was a simple, intimate connection with the natural world, a way to escape the stifling indoor heat. Compare this to your climate-controlled bedroom, your soft mattress, your crisp sheets, and the quiet hum of your air conditioning. No fans, no Febreze, just hope and a breeze. No reliable pest control beyond a swat of the hand. No sealed windows or insulated walls, just mud, straw, and the ingenuity of adaptation. And for that, my friend, you can offer a silent prayer of thanks for modern plumbing, electricity, and the glorious invention of the refrigerator. Imagine trying to keep food from spoiling in that kind of heat without one. Your takeout options would be severely limited, to say the least, and forget the luxury of a cold drink on demand. The Egyptian home was a place of constant activity. Food preparation, weaving, mending tools, caring for children. The air would likely be thick with dust, especially on windy days, and the persistent hum of flies would be an inescapable soundtrack to daily life. Personal hygiene, while valued, was a constant battle against the elements. Baths would involve carrying water from the river or a well, heating it over a fire, and then washing in a basin. No instant hot showers here. So the next time you step into your gleaming bathroom, with its endless supply of hot water, remember the mud brick homes and the constant battle against dust, heat, and insect life, and feel a surge of pure, unadulterated gratitude. Let's now move beyond the home and into the bustling world of artisans and their crafts. While many Egyptians were farmers, a vibrant class of skilled craftspeople supported the society, creating everything from the humblest pots to the most intricate jewellery. These were the unseen hands that built the foundations of Egyptian glory, far from the grand monuments, but essential to everyday life. Imagine stepping into a potter's workshop. The air is damp, earthy, and carries the unique scent of wet clay. In the centre, a potter's wheel turning slowly, perhaps driven by a foot pedal or even an assistant. The potter, their hands stained with reddish-brown clay, works with practiced ease, coaxing beautiful functional forms from a simple lump of earth. Bowls, jars for storing grain and water, beer vessels, cooking pots, all essential items for every Egyptian household. The rhythmic hum of the wheel, the squish of clay, the occasional ceramic clinking as finished pieces are set aside to dry. The work is repetitive, precise, and requires immense skill developed over years of apprenticeship. Imagine the sensation of the cool, wet clay yielding to your touch, shaping itself under your steady hands. It's a meditative process, a dance between human intention and natural material. After shaping, the pots would be left to dry in the sun, then fired in simple kilns, transforming them from fragile clay to durable ceramic. No delicate china sets or instant glassware. Every vessel was a testament to human craft. Nearby you might hear the soft rhythmic clack of a loom creaking in a weaver's workshop. Ancient Egypt was renowned for its fine linen, spun from the flax grown along the Nile. Weavers, often women, would spend their days at vertical looms, patiently interlacing threads to create fabric for clothing, shrouds, and sails. Imagine the fine dust of flax in the air, the rhythmic movements of their hands, the subtle scent of fibres. Their fingers would be nimble, calloused from handling the threads, perhaps stained with natural dyes from indigo or madder. Every piece of cloth, from the simplest tunic to the finest mummy wrap, was a product of countless hours of hand labour. Along the river banks, amidst the scent of wood and resin, you'd find boat builders. The Nile was the highway of Egypt, and boats were indispensable for transport, trade, and even leisure. Imagine the sound of wood being planed, the rhythmic tap of a hammer on a chisel, the creak of timber as sections were fitted together. These artisans used simple tools, bronze saws, adzes, chisels, but possessed an intimate understanding of the properties of wood and the forces of water. Their boats, from humble skiffs to grand barges, were the vessels of connection, vital for moving goods and people up and down the long river. These artisans, from potters to jewellers, scribes to carpenters, were the backbone of Egyptian society. Their skills were passed down through generations, often within families. There were no factories, no mass production lines, no power tools. Every item, from the simplest bowl to the most intricate statue, was handmade, born of individual skill, patience, and repetitive labour. Imagine the time it took to create even a simple chair, knowing that every joint, every surface was shaped by hand. Their work built the unseen foundations of Egyptian glory. While the pharaohs commanded the grand projects, it was the myriad of artisans who forged the tools, wove the sails, crafted the vessels, and created the everyday objects that made life possible. They lived often in modest circumstances, their hands stained with dye or resin, their bodies tired from long days of physical labour, yet their contributions were invaluable. And for that, you can feel a truly immense surge of gratitude for the Industrial Revolution, for mass production, for cheap, abundant goods, and for power tools. No need to spend months weaving your own shirt, or years learning to make a simple ceramic mug. Just a quick trip to the store or a few clicks online. The sheer ease and affordability of everyday objects in your life is a modern miracle, directly contrasted with the painstaking, slow, and often uncomfortable labour of the ancient Egyptian artisan. No Amazon Prime, just a lot of skill and patience. Finally, let's wrap ourselves in the warmth of family games and festivals, the heart of ancient Egyptian community life. Despite the hard work and daily challenges, life on the Nile was also filled with moments of joy, connection, and celebration. Imagine a family gathered for their evening meal in their mud brick home. The day's heat has begun to relent, and the air is cooler. Perhaps a simple oil lamp casts a warm, flickering glow, or the last rays of the setting sun stream through the doorway. They would sit on woven mats sharing simple fare. Bread, perhaps some vegetables, fish from the Nile, and of course, beer. The conversation would be gentle, reflecting on the day's events, planning for tomorrow. The children laughing nearby as they chase each other around the courtyard, or perhaps play with simple toys, a wooden doll, a pull-along animal. Evening was also a time for games. One of the most popular board games was Senet, a game of strategy and chance similar to backgammon. Imagine the quiet click of game pieces on a carved board, the focused expressions, the occasional burst of good-natured banter. It was a way to unwind, to connect, to test wits. They didn't have YouTube or video games or endless streaming services, but they had board games, stories told around the fire, and the rich tapestry of human connection. Beyond the daily rhythms of home and work, life was punctuated by vibrant seasonal festivals. These were often tied to the agricultural cycle or the worship of various gods. Imagine the sound of flute music in the distance, perhaps the rhythmic beat of drums signalling a celebration. People would gather dressed in their finest, though still simple, linen. There would be feasting, dancing, storytelling, and offerings to the gods. These festivals were moments of collective joy, a release from the daily grind, a reaffirmation of their beliefs and their community bonds. Think of the festival of Opet, where the statue of the gods Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were carried in procession from Karnak to Luxor, accompanied by vast crowds, music, and celebration. Or the festival of drunkenness, a raucous celebration of the goddess Hathor. These were not just religious observances, they were deeply social events, opportunities for families and friends to come together, to share food and drink, and to simply be joyful. The firelight would cast dancing shadows, illuminating smiling faces, the air filled with music and laughter. Survival was central to their existence, yet it was balanced by a deep-seated belief system and a capacity for joy. They believed in a rich afterlife, in the protection of their gods, and in the fundamental order of the cosmos. This belief system permeated every aspect of their lives, providing comfort, meaning, and a sense of belonging. The family unit was paramount, offering support, teaching, and emotional intimacy. Compare this to our modern world of endless entertainment options, personalized experiences, and often a sense of disconnection despite constant connectivity. They had simpler pleasures, but perhaps deeper connections forged through shared labor, shared meals, and shared beliefs. Their games were tactile, their music live, their stories told face to face. No screens, no scrolling, just the warmth of human presence and the glow of firelight. So, as you slowly drift into slumber, take a moment to appreciate the enduring spirit of these ancient Egyptians. They faced challenges we can barely imagine. The constant threat of famine, the relentless sun, a life entirely dependent on the whim of a river. Yet, they found joy in family, solace in their beliefs, and celebration in the rhythms of their lives. And for that, for the resilience of the human spirit to find happiness amidst hardship, we can offer a quiet, admiring sigh. Sleep well, knowing that your own life, with its effortless comforts and endless conveniences, is a testament to thousands of years of human struggle, ingenuity, and the simple, enduring desire for a good night's rest. The Nile still flows, but your worries are far, far away.